the Tuesday to say that they'd fixed it. So it only took nearly a week. But yeah, there was a problem with the lamp, so I don't know why it only affected me and not Robert. I think it's because my lectures are far more interesting. Personally, that's what I think. There we go. Okay, today, as promised, I'm going to start bringing it much more down to the business level and the project level. And from here on in, we'll specialise specifically on business and project management. Okay? So today we're going to start looking at the business case for sustainability. So we've done lots and lots of stuff, I guess, about trying to appeal to you as people. It's your moral obligation. You need to do this for you and your children and your family. But this is the business reasons now, okay? And business doesn't do anything unless there's money in it. Of course. There has to be some profit, or if the term I prefer to use is some value in it, okay? And value and money aren't the same thing. I hope you understand. Okay, so we're going to look today at sustainable business, sustainable project management we'll look at next week. Okay, so what is sustainable business? How do we define it? Can we define it? Well, it's about ensuring long-term business success, okay, whilst contributing towards economic and social development, a healthy environment and a stable society. This module, before I took it over 3 years ago, used to be called Project Sustainability. I changed it to Sustainable Project Management. The reason is because people used to think this whole module was about sustaining the project over time, the ability to keep your project ongoing. But in business, that kind of is what sustainability is. We're ensuring the long-term operation of the business, or the venture, or the project. But to be truly sustainable in the terms we defined here, we need to make sure we contribute to economic, social development, healthy environments, and stable societies. And you probably have seen that more and more companies are seeking to do this. They're overtly trying to show how sustainable they are with their corporate social responsibility plans, or green products, or FSC certified, fair trade certified products. So businesses are really, really going for this. They can see the benefits of embedding sustainability into their corporate and operational strategies. So this is driven by a number of drivers. Remember, for your assessment, I'm going to ask you to list some of the drivers. So this is the important bit. So drivers such as economics, financial drivers, of course. Stakeholder interest, so people like you and me demanding better goods, better projects and products. Legislative and legal requirements, so doing it because we have to comply with the minimum laws of a nation, or a borough, or a standard. And also to be more competitive, because at the end of the day, businesses are there to compete for our business. So adopting sustainable business practice means establishing this link between financial profitability and ecological and social performance. And it's a very uneasy marriage, okay? How do we still be profitable and at the same time have these lovely goals of ecological and social performance? And increasingly, as we'll see in the coming weeks, organisations are accounted to explicitly account for their actions. So not just the financial results now. Most companies, or the larger companies, are also reporting their social and ecological performance. We often call it triple bottom line accounting. We'll talk about that in a few weeks' time. So how are we performing on the stock market? How are we performing on our corporate ethics and values? And how are we performing on our resource use? So it's an extremely important area of business, and has been for the last 20 or 30 years. But it's becoming much more to the fore at the moment. So it's a nice kind of diagram, I guess, of the drivers for incorporating sustainability into business. And with any kind of drivers, we often talk about the push, the pull, and the pressure and support models. Okay. So there are things that are pushing businesses to become more sustainable. So that's things like investors looking for good corporate governance, for effective management of risk. Things like the Dow Jones Sustainability Index I talked about last week is a measure of how companies are trying to do that. International financing organisations, corporations, the World Bank. If you do a project for the World Bank, you have to show how you're meeting your social obligations. And employees are pushing companies to be more sustainable. People like us who are working for companies are saying, we want to work for a company that's more ethical, that treats us fair as workers, that treats society fair. Then you have the pull, things that are pulling businesses, they have to kind of go with this in the future. International trade agreements, customers expecting proof and certification, such as fair trade products, yeah? Customers demanding that that's what they have in their products. International actions, sustainability reporting, so the license, the push ones are the license to exist, you have to do these in order to actually be a business. License to sell, you have to do these in order to get your product out to market. We have the pressure, which comes from sustainable development into government policies, civil society's expectations, laws, international standards, your license to operate, you cannot operate unless you exist within the law. And then some of the supportive ones, so responsible care principles, good corporate governance, which is just good business, looking after your business and looking after the people who work for you, and corporate social responsibility. So there's lots of things that are driving, pushing, pulling, pressuring and supporting businesses to become more sustainable. What's that mean for project managers? Well, as you're the people that implement initiatives, and project managers implement change, so the change in an organisation's state or service, or the change in delivery of new products, or a change towards delivering new infrastructure, you're increasingly going to be asked now that your projects are sustainable, both in terms of your outputs and your outcomes. So if you're working for an organisation that's saying, we need to be more sustainable, then that's natural that should and will filter down to the project level. And that's where it gets interesting, which is what we're doing this course for. So in order to do this, you as a project manager must have an understanding of these drivers. You must know what's pushing you to try to do this, because only then can you plan throughout your projects. So if you have a full understanding of what is pushing your business, your organisation, your client to demand this, then you can start to plan for that. Okay, so we'll look at the different drivers from different aspects in more detail. So first off, environmental drivers. So a good example, climate change mitigation. We talked about that extensively, I guess, over the last few weeks. So these are the physical effects of climate change. Changes in temperature, the weather, availability, other changes. They affect core business practices because you need to transport, you need logistics, you need to transport people and goods around the country, around the world. Climate change impacts on that through weather events and weather changes. Fixed assets like buildings are at risk from climate change. Increased resource use from need for lighting or need for heating. And resource availability. If the resources are no longer available because we've used them all, such as oil or plastic, oil to make plastic, then that's going to really affect our core business if it's making plastic chairs, for instance. But physical infrastructure, critical infrastructure, biological processes, industrial processes, all of these are really sensitive to weather and climate. So a good example is we had a deep freeze in the UK, and I think I mentioned this before, UK do not do snow. Okay? So all of you from the northern countries up there, the Scandinavia and Iceland, yeah, we don't do snow. When it happens here, everything shuts down in the UK. And we had a big problem in 2010 when we had a really harsh winter. And one of the big insurers at the time estimated that cost the economy about £1.2 billion per day in lost productivity. So that's from employees not being able to come into work, and from goods not being able to be shipped around, people not going out into stores and shopping. So it has a massive effect. So organisations now are seeking to try to mitigate these problems, diversifying operations, or trying to find alternative transport methods, or just moving your operations somewhere else. Okay, so if you're not near a major, if you're near a major road which always gets blocked, moving towards somewhere where there's better rail infrastructure, or moving to another part of the world where there is less kind of critical weather problems. And essentially what it comes down to is risk management. All climate change is a risk management aspect, simple as that. And again, as project managers, you are experts, or need to be experts, in predicting and managing risk. So in this case, the probability of exposure to climate change and the potential impacts of business arising from exposure to it. Reverts in a risk, and then we need to mitigate to get around that risk, and that works out what our vulnerability is. So we needed to. So all this is good risk management. It's nothing new. It's not about sustainability as such. It's just a new risk that we haven't really had to plan for in the past. So climate change mitigation, risk management is driving us to become more sustainable. Resource efficiency. Again, as project managers, you are or should be experts in managing resources, because resources cost money, and it takes time to produce or time to get hold of them. And you need to bring your project in on time and on budget, so managing resources is key. And again, all sustainability does is throw a little bit extra into the pot, if you like. So all businesses can save money by using resources more efficiently, raw materials, energy, water. Forward-thinking companies are already seeing these benefits, okay, by trying to reduce their consumption. So in the UK, 2% of business profits are lost through inefficient use of resources. It doesn't sound like a lot, 2%, but we reckon we can save around 23 billion per year by making simple changes to, water use, for instance, to energy use, just to travel resources. So small changes can add up to big effects in the economy in the UK. We also need to understand the links between the industrial ecosystem and the natural ecosystem. So the natural ecosystem that works, a tree grows, it dies, it leaves nutrients in the ground, those nutrients in the ground nourish a seed, the seed grows again, the tree grows, the tree dies, and it goes in a circle. It's the same really in a production process. We produce goods, it's consumed by the user, it's then wasted or recycled back into the system, and we can have this circle that goes round again. And what the aim we're trying to do there is we're trying to reduce our resource use and extract them back into our production costs at the end. So we're trying to create a circular way of working. So this idea is the industry as a living organism, much like the earth itself, consumes energy, consumes materials, produces waste in undesired output, products and services, and waste in undesirable output. It consumes energy and materials that needs to be reduced. Well, if the industrial organism, a bit like us, consumes more energy and materials that can be reproduced, or emits more carbon emissions that can be absorbed through natural sinks, that's when we say it's unsustainable. Okay? So we're producing more waste than we should, and more carbon than we should. So another environmental driver, environmental proactivity I'm calling this. So being proactive, trying to do the right thing in order to get a business advantage. So an important distinction from environmental strategies is the degree to which they can be more or less proactive in our approaches. We used to have a system in the world where we were always reactive. We pollute something. We imagine a power station polluting a water course. We go back and we fix it. An industrial product would produce some kind of industrial waste that was harmful. We go back and fix it. We slowly moved through the 70s, 80s, 90s, the year 2000 onwards to getting away from that model and just being more proactive and stopping this pollution in the first place. And we've got quite good at that. That's what we mean by environmental proactivity. So what this means is we internalise our voluntary commitment to the natural resource to accept an environmental leadership position. So there are companies out there that are explicitly saying we want to be seen as the most sustainable company in our field. Okay? There were quite famous ones, things like the Body Shop we had in the UK, who made cosmetics, who very vocally went after that market aggressively. And there were other ones too. Some of the sports manufacturers are doing the same thing. There's a big battle between Nike and Puma at the moment. They weren't always known for being environmentally proactive, but at the moment they are. They see it as a business opportunity. And so they're doing everything they can to promote themselves as sustainable companies. So key practices might include planning, such as decision making based on environmental management systems, employee training to get employees bought into the idea of more sustainable actions, and environmental planning explicitly. So organisations may choose to adopt this proactive stance to satisfy the expectations of its stakeholder groups. So Nike, for instance, had very, very bad press in the 1980s for making their products using cheap labour and forced labour in some cases. Their stakeholders, the people who bought their products, started to say, well, actually, we don't want that. We're not going to buy your products if you do that. We want your products, but we want you to be better and more responsible at producing them. And Nike saw that as a business who want to make money and said, okay, we can see that there's a shift in the way that people are thinking. Maybe it's time that we shifted our business that way too. And so there are a lot of good examples of organisations doing that now. So yeah, we can be proactive. A lot of companies will do this simply out of trying to get an
Good question.
Yeah, sure.
You just mentioned about this cheap laboring.
Mhm.
To move business to China, it doesn't mean that they're using cheap labor still.
No, it doesn't.
Why not?
The difference the difference between cheap labour and what I would say irresponsible labour. So you think Nike in the 80s, what they were famous for was using, it was usually Thai and Indian suppliers who didn't pay workers what the minimum wage in their country was, if there was a minimum wage, didn't give them a living wage, if you like, weren't looking after them, 12-hour days, children working. That's what I mean by cheap suppliers. I don't mean like good suppliers who are cheap, for instance. So Foxconn in China, you know, who make all the iPad parts, they make it there because it's cheap to make, but they apparently are treating their workers better now. So I mean, that's what I mean by it, yeah? Does that make sense? Personal ethics is a big one. We're going to hear from this guy in the seminar, actually. So some CEOs now, some heads of companies, have got a personal crusade is not the right word, probably. They personally want their companies to be more environmentally proactive. So this guy here is Yvon Chouinard. He's the founder of Patagonia, an outdoor clothing company. And he always wanted to put the environment first in his business. He always decided, he was a climber, and he thought, I always want to, I want to do good for the environment because it's been good to me. But he's one of the first companies to reuse materials and use its mail order catalogue to speak out on environmental issues, such as genetically modified foods and overfishing. So it was his ethics that drove his company to become more sustainable. They also happen to be very profitable at the moment as well. And there are links there. Same with this guy here, Ray Anderson. He died a couple of years ago. Often held up as one of the most famous, what's the word? A great example of a chief executive officer who saw the light, if you like, and went from having a company that was quite destructive in the way it used resources to being probably the best use in the United States. So yeah, he had a company that made carpet tiles like the ones we were standing on here, which is a very dirty kind of thing to do. They use plastics and rubbers, very energy intensive. And he read a book and he saw the light, and you'll hear from him in the seminar. And he decided he was going to change his organisation from being one of the dirtiest to one of the cleanest. And you'll see in the videos, I can't remember what the figures are, but basically his company went from nothing to the biggest company in the world doing this. At the same time, managed out waste and managed out resource use. So you can be environmentally proactive and also extremely successful. Point I'm trying to make. Personal ethics. Okay, so that's environmental drivers. What about social drivers? Social sustainability is important as well. So the issues of whether companies should consider their social responsibility or the impact of their activities on their stakeholders, it's no longer up for discussion now. We live in a world where we have Twitter, Facebook, real-time communication all over the place. You've seen it. If something happens, a company does something that people don't like, automatically they're named and shamed. Everybody knows about it in the whole world. We often say we're living in a goldfish bowl world. Okay? You cannot make mistakes anymore and learn from them to a degree. So companies are falling over themselves to try to say, look, we are more socially responsible. And people can see that. So it's an integral part of the creation of value in the management of enterprises. Okay? So to be a socially sustainable enterprise requires that a firm needs to internalise the social costs, maintain and grow its capital stock, avoid exceeding the social carrying capacities of the world, foster democracy, enlarge the range of people's choices, and distribute resources and rights fairly. So this is a bit like that Nike example. This is what we're talking about with Nike using companies that want to look after their staff, if you like, okay? Pay them well, feed them well, not make them work 12 hours and adhere to the employment laws. Because if we don't do that, the press comes back and bites us. And you've all seen it, boycott Shell, do this, do that. Primark in the UK has got a very bad name at the moment, etc., etc. We need to do that in order to get good financial return, as well as social return. Corporate social responsibility or corporate sustainability. This is a big area at the moment. It's defined at meeting the needs of the firm's stakeholders, all of them, so that's employees, clients, pressure groups, the communities in which they work, without compromising its ability to meet the needs of future stakeholders as well. So it's tied up with that Brundtland definition. So the idea is we are doing well about society and our clients and the people who work from us in order so that we can keep on going in the future. So if we don't do that, maybe we'll be out of business in the future. Public are becoming increasingly aware of these impacts that corporations have on the society and the environment. Big high-profile cases things like BP and the oil spill in BP and the Bhopal disaster in India in the 70s, and etc., etc. People know that corporations can do harm. So corporations are using the principles of corporate sustainability to try to show that they are not like that, they are doing good. We often call it having a license to operate, a license to operate from governments and communities, and also a social license to operate. So if you're in a company and they've got a very bad name, multinational for instance, haven't got a good name, people know that they're not the best company in the world, they've had a few kind of disasters, BP maybe, I don't know. You go to another country and you say, we want to set up our operations here. Well, what do you think the government thinks about that sometimes? They think, well, you know, is this a good company to welcome onto our shores, if you like? And the same for communities. We've seen it in the UK with fracking. Big fracking firms, Quadrilla is a big one, United States firm. Whether it's true or not, they have a bad name at the moment about doing these hydraulic fracturing practices, which gets gas out of the earth in a quite a energy inefficient and water inefficient way. They have a bad name. People do not want them to operate in their backyard, if you like. So we've seen protests in the UK over that, big protests. So this company cannot carry on with its operations because people are saying no. So organisations need to enable, they foster that kind of authentic notion that they are sustainable, they are good, and they are socially interested in people in order to have that license to operate. So good performance of sustainability gets you a good positive reputation with stakeholders. Alternatively, the consequences of mismanaging sustainability relationships can be costly in terms of reputation damage, which of course impacts on your bottom line. Loss of reputation is everything in the corporate world. Very similar thing, corporate ethics is another social driver. It's a form of applied ethics or professional ethics which examines ethical problems that arise in our business environment. So things like rights between a company and its employees, the rights to treat your employees well, to give them all contracts, for instance, to pay them the minimum wage, to pay them right. Also your suppliers, so having agreements with your suppliers and then paying them on time, you know, not reneging on your obligations, if you like. And your responsibility to shareholders, to make a profit and to not renege on that. One of the best known failures of corporate ethics was the Enron scandal. I don't know if anybody knew about that a few years ago now. Massive corporates, did a lot of risk management and banking in the United States, and basically the people at the top just took all the money out of it. They completely cooked the books, if you like, is the term we use for it, creative accounting, to show that they had more money than they did have. People kept investing, thinking this company was great. When it all fell apart, people lost everything. And some people in America lost all of their pensions they'd worked years and years for. And that came down to a question of, well, governance. There wasn't good governance in place of that organisation, but also ethics. So each of us has personal ethics, and so do businesses. Most corporate websites will now say about how good they are promoting social values under their headings. So you go onto any website of any big corporation, yes, our sustainability is our core value. You know, we are trying to be better for the world, etc., etc. Some firms have gone even further, trying to realign themselves ethically, such as BP. So BP's original kind of name was British Petroleum. Yeah, so they were a petrol company, they were a diesel oil company, and they changed a few years ago to Beyond Petroleum. So trying to show themselves as we're moving away into a more socially, environmentally acceptable way of going. It's come back to bite them a little bit, of course, because they've reneged on that a little bit. So corporate ethics, doing the right thing socially. And finally, corporate social responsibility explicitly. It's a form of self-regulation that's built into your business model. It's a way of the company looking at itself and making sure that everything it does is a good thing to do, ethical and responsible. It aims to embrace responsibility for the company's actions and encourage positive impacts. Proponents say that it's great, it makes long-term profits for operating with perspective, while critics say it distracts from the economic world of business. Some people say that all this social stuff is not anything to do with businesses. Business should just make money, and anything like this is a distraction from its core business. However, I would suggest that most people in society now are actually saying, well, no, we do want you to be better. We do want our organisations to give something to us. Now we have a ISO standard, which is an international standard organisation standard for CSR. We actually have a way of measuring a company's corporate social responsibility, how good they are. Same as we have a quality management. same as we have for environmental management, same as we have for safety. So it's become a big global thing now, and nearly every company you see will have a CSR policy of some sort. We'll get into it in a couple of weeks. What's interesting is how this translates through to projects. All of the stuff we're talking about here is high-level organisational stuff. Okay? So your company will have a corporate social responsibility plan, but your project probably won't. And that's what we're going to touch on in the future, these linkages or not. Okay, economic drivers, probably the most important one from a business point of view. It's all very well being socially responsible, environmentally responsible, reducing resource use, but we need to make money. So how can sustainability drive us to make more money? First one is obvious, cost savings, driving down costs, including operational efficiency and workforce efficiency. So being more resource efficient is a sustainability thing, of course it is. You're using less of the resources we need to take out of the system of the earth. We're putting less into the earth through landfill, for instance. We're being more efficient in our use of fuel and water. But it's also mainly driven by cost saving, of course. And why not? So cost savings from improved operational performance and efficiencies, process optimization, waste minimization, improved quality, reduced error rates, reduced product that you have to get rid of. These can do things, being more environmentally sustainable can help you get more permits, improve your relations with regulators, which leads to less of a better license to operate, less red tape. You're seen as being more sustainable by the government, and they're more likely to want to work with you and push your products through. Bottom line costs, environmental operations, so water, energy efficiency, but also generating growth. Okay, opportunities, sustainability is an opportunity. So new markets, that's something, like I said, that's Nike, Puma, going for a more environmentally sound market. They're not losing their other one, they just got an additional one they're adding onto it. New products, new customers, market share, better innovation, new reputation, differentiation, price premium. People will pay a premium quite often for fair trade products and organic products and products that are more socially or environmentally sustainable. So you can move in that way to create growth. Increased revenue through innovation. Sustainability helps to identify new markets and price premiums. So you can make more money, and we'll go into that in more detail next week. Sustainability investment. So people said when we had the downturn, well, we're still in that downturn, aren't we really? Started off 2008 to 2010. Would this put sustainability off the agenda? Would organisations say, well, we can't afford to be sustainable now, it's expensive, we can't do it anymore? Well, actually, the opposite happened in a lot of places. So a growing number of companies increased their investments in sustainability. We've got the first MIT Sloan Management Review. MIT is a Massachusetts Institute of Technology, one of the most foremost research institutes in the United States. They did a big study, Sustainability and Innovation, where they looked at global executives and they talked to them about what they were doing. In 2009, they found that 25% of their respondents, CEOs of top companies, said they were increasing their commitment to sustainability. After the financial crisis, 2010, 59% said this was the case. And then 70% said they expected their organisation to step up investment in sustainability over the next year. So despite there being a global downturn, people are still investing in trying to be more sustainable because they see it as an opportunity and also as the way that the world is actually going. Value creation. So another driver. We have the opportunity here to develop new technologies, innovative products, services for unmet social and environmental needs. There are things that will happen with a world that is changing from resource use and climate change. There are new products coming out all over the place now to try to help us cope with that. Energy generating technologies, water saving technologies, for instance. Improved access to capital is something that we're seeing which can improve the value of organisations and projects. So the improved reputation with investors, bond agencies and banks. So I think I touched on it before and I said that banks are now looking to companies to have good CSR policies, good environmental sustainability policies before they invest. Because they want to be able to say we only invest in good social products now. HSBC Bank, the bank, Hong Kong Bank, I can't remember what it stands for, HSBC. They had some problems when they were investing in some energy projects in China a few years ago, things like the Three Gorges Dam, which was seen at the time to be quite it was displacing a lot of people, not a very socially sustainable thing to do. They've started to shift a little bit in their investment decisions, shifting towards investing in wind farms, investing in renewable energy, because they want to be able to say, look at what we're doing, we're actually becoming a better company, if you like. So you can get enhanced credit worthiness, lower cost of capital, greater investor confidence, a company's ability to manage change. There's a growing trend in the investment community to use environmental and social performance factors to determine risks. Okay? So climate change, it's a risk. If you're a bank and you're investing in an organisation, you want to know that that organisation is prepared to deal with any consequences of climate change. So in a way, by being more sustainable, thinking about these things as an organisation, you can make sure you draw more money into your organisation from your investors. And finally on this one, competitive advantage. The mainstay of businesses, trying to get one over on your fellow business, if you like, trying to be the best in your field, trying to make more money. Some people think that all of these stuff I'm just talking about are distractions from the real responsibility of business, which is making profit. Okay? Profit for your shareholders is the only thing we should worry about. They worry that being socially responsibility will harm the cotton's bottom end, be less competitive. However, this has been studied a lot, and you'll see this if you're doing your research for your essay. There are so many studies now that have looked at competitive advantage and sustainability, and there is no inherent conflict between the two. So at the firm level, competitive advantage is formed out of going beyond compliance, creating and developing its new unique capabilities. For those of you that are working in construction at the moment, because I know a lot of you are, all of the companies that are now trying to build more sustainable buildings, BREEAM buildings, co-sustainable homes, LEED buildings, they're trying to be the first people to develop an affordable and manageable way of doing this, because the first person that can do this the best way is going to get a competitive advantage over all of the other companies. So by going a bit further and being a bit more proactive, we know the way the world is changing, and we know that people are demanding more sustainable goods. If we can develop that now, we've got an advantage over the other guys who are still not doing that. Competitiveness at the regional and national level depends on a distinct competitive advantage of firms. What we're trying to do in the UK, for instance, we're trying to sell our expertise in renewable energy, in wind farms. We're trying to sell our expertise in solar. It's not really working for us at the moment because China are becoming the mainstay of solar, and still the Scandinavian companies are still better at doing wind farms and work. So by getting a competitive advantage by moving into these areas, it's not just a company thing, it's also a governmental and a national thing. When companies treat the issues of sustainability as part of their strategic context, they discover risks and opportunities. So when you look at climate change, you find all the risks, but you also find the opportunities for niche products, things that haven't been done before, to do things differently. So as long as you build these into your core activities as profit making, you can enhance your competitive advantage. Okay, finally I think business drivers. So some less tangible things now. Improved image. Companies are always wanting to improve their image, of course they are. They want to attract the best people who work for them. So companies are secretly increasing to demonstrate their sustainability credentials in order to provide a better image. So in that MIT review that I talked about before, respondents cited by a large margin improved image as a principal benefit of addressing sustainability. So they were asked, what are the greatest benefits to your organisation in addressing sustainability? And we've got cost savings, competitive advantage, employee relations, improved brand or image. By far the greatest one, trying to be the leader in your field. Many organisations have a strong desire to demonstrate environmental stewardship, as we said. Stakeholder regulation, supply chain risk are also part of that as well. But aside from managing risk, stakeholder relations, we need to do this. We need to define ourselves as being the leaders in our field, okay? So trying to be the most sustainable company, improving your image is a key thing. Sustainability is a mother of innovation. It's one of my favourite sayings. The quest for sustainability can unearth a motherlode of technological innovations. If you want to innovate, and innovation equals competitive advantage in a lot of cases, look towards sustainability. So in the quest to reduce resource use, for instance, waste weight and associated carbon, Coca-Cola, they designed the plant bottle. Recycled plastic. It was made out of 30% renewable plant-based sugar. It was lighter than other products, it was slightly cheaper than other products, and it was biodegradable. And so the only way they did that is because they were looking for carbon reductions. So that made them innovate and find a new product which they feel is giving them one over the other companies. And also it's reduced weight, so it costs less to transport around the place, so there's more profit in that. And you can sell it for more as well, because people will pay a premium for a more sustainable bottle, if you like, in some cases. We've got the Maersk line, which is one of the largest fleet of container ships. It's got this new idea it came up with a few years ago called super slow steaming. So running ships 10% below their top speed. Okay, they reckon they saved $1 million, 3,500 tons of fuel and 10,000 tons of carbon dioxide. It's not a great thing to do, but they needed to make some savings in carbon, and they just decided to run their ships a little slower. To make this work, they had to convince their customers, though, that speed to market was not the most important value that they delivered. Okay, so they had to go to their client, if you like, and say, well, we can get it there for that day there, but it's going to cost us more, it's going to be more in carbon, it's going to cost you more. If it takes a bit longer to get there, do we get any better benefit from that? And the company said, yeah, well, actually, yes, okay. So if you reduce your carbon, it helps us with our corporate social responsibility. You reduce your cost, it helps us with lower cost. Speed to market isn't always the most important thing. So you can innovate around sustainability. Customer loyalty. So sustainability provides an opportunity to develop customers' willingness to pay an increase or premium. Deeper understanding of customer expectations leads to more closely targeted solutions. So again, the Body Shop, as I said, in the UK, known for being one of the most environmentally responsible companies they wanted to be that, they found that in Canada, 77% of their customers were making more purchasing choices based on the behaviour and the ethics of the company than they were 5 years ago. Some of them were saying they were doing that on a weekly basis. McKinsey and Company, Global Survey 2008, consumers in 8 major economies showed that 87% are concerned about the environmental and social impacts of the products they buy. Consumers are starting to make decisions, well they have been for a while, but more people are, about the products they buy, and it's not always based on price anymore. Okay? It's a little bit more expensive to buy your product which is more socially sound, it has more innovation, it has less carbon for instance, then some people will pay that. And finally, recruitment and retention. So MIT Sloan report again, employees' interest in sustainability. 6% of respondents said the issue was having a significant impact on their company. Leaders were saying that enhanced recruitment, retention and engagement and other employee issues are a benefit of addressing sustainability. We want to work for companies that are more socially, environmentally sustainable. Why would you not? So 83% of employees in G7 countries says a positive CSR reputation increases their loyalty. You're more likely to stay with your company if it's a decent company to work for. A study by the Aspen Institute found that MBA students in America were expressing more interest in finding work that offered the potential of making a contribution to society than it was over their salary. So people were more interested in working with a company where they thought they could make an impact than simply their bottom line salary at the end of the day. And this has all changed. Stanford University, again, MBA job choice. MBA graduates would sacrifice an average of $13,700 in salary to work for a better company. And Patagonia, who you saw the guy before you, Siobhan, his motto is to build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm to business, and to implement solutions to the environmental crisis. Its turnover rate of staff is 4.5 compared to an industry-wide employee of 20%. So employee recruitment intention, more sustainable companies are shown to be better at it, okay? And turnover of staff costs money. Every new member of staff comes in, you have to train, okay? Every new member of staff comes in, some of their skills leave when the old one leaves out the door. So increased recruitment and intention, a big driver nowadays. And finally, very quickly, legislative drivers. So legislation, okay, a key driver of course. This is a stick to beat us with. A lot of those other things are the carrots, the things that we can do to kind of try to create a better place, if you like, or more money. But non-compliance with regulations is costly. Okay, so environmental regulations vary of course by city or by region or by wherever. Enterprises feel the need to abide by voluntary codes as well, such as the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, Forest Stewardship Council, Fair Trade. Okay, these are voluntary, but companies realise they need to comply with these in order to carry on their work. Risk management, we touched on that briefly. Mitigate risk by complying with regulatory requirements. Social licence to operate in areas. Supply chain security. reputation risks, cost avoided by minimising business risks. All of these are key drivers, and risk is a big legislative driver. Voluntary schemes, you've probably all seen this one again, yeah, rainforest certified, fair trade, energy recommended, this is the European energy label, FSC. You're seeing these all over the places now. These are voluntary standards. Companies want to incorporate these because they understand that that's what consumers are looking for. And finally, environmental standards and competitiveness. There is a positive correlation between high environmental standards and competitiveness. Some people think the higher the standards of a country, the less competitive it will be, because it costs you to comply with those regulations. However, at a macroeconomic scale, regulations are unlikely to increase competitiveness and may affect it. However, this can be offset. So reverse neutrality projects, so increase or introduce reductions in corporate tax, equivalent to the cost of the environmental tax. So for instance, in the UK, there is a zero VAT rate on certain energy efficiency measures for companies that are put in place. Level the playing fields, negotiating the nature of regulation across countries, and awareness and investment promotion. Ensure businesses are aware of the regulations and prompt them to invest in operating practices. So this was from a few years ago, looking at the strength of the environmentally related regime, so which countries had the most strict environmental standards and their competitiveness. As you can see, Finland, Netherlands, Switzerland, Germany, USA, Denmark, UK, Sweden have the most strict environmental regulations in the world, but are also the most competitive. Bulgaria, El Salvador, UK and Philippines have some of the weakest in the world and were at the time the least competitive. Bulgaria, sorry, got that one there. So yeah, there is a direct correlation between environmental standards. So it's not expensive, it's not anti-competitive to be more sustainable. Okay, so just to summarise up then quick, there's a number of drivers which make the case for business sustainability. We'll talk about projects level next week. So there's the environmental, social, business, economic and legislative drivers. However, there are many, many more of these, and you'll have to go out and find them for your essays, because I don't want you to just give me all the stuff I'm just giving you. There are lots of drivers, and you will see when you look at the literature. Don't believe what I say, read the literature, because it's all there, okay? Okay, thank you very much. I'll see you in the seminars next day. Can't be bothered. Oh, you want a video?